All right. So, 4.2 is a major release. Again, I'm kind of surprised that Oracle didn't call it 5.0 because there is a tremendous amount of new functionality in 4.2. The upgrade process is really pretty simple. I haven't had any problems upgrading from version 3.0, 4.0, 4.1 up to 4.2. I haven't had any issue on a whole bunch of different machines that I've worked on, development machines, production machines. The biggest thing that we talked about, mobile development and web services. Oracle has put a tremendous amount of functionality into this new release that revolve around those two things. That's where the majority of this presentation I'm going to talk about. But certainly not the only thing, because there's a lot of other features that are available. Oh, for the love of Pete. All right, so, again, for those of you who were in my previous presentation, some of these slides are going to be duplicates. When you're developing natively for mobile applications, it is a pain in the neck. Why? Well, you've got a lot of different targets that you have to hit. For iOS, Apple is pretty good about, because they control the entire ecosystem, they're pretty good about making it easy for you to upgrade to different versions of iOS. And you can see as of December of last year, most people have upgraded to the 6th version of iOS. You still got some people running 5, still some people running 4. Obviously, older devices can't get upgraded as easily, and some people just don't want to upgrade for whatever reason. Android is an unbelievable pain in the neck to try and target that guy if you're going to do native applications. They're all over the place. This was as of December, and these numbers have changed dramatically just since then. You had 2% were on Jelly Bean 4.1. There's now a 4.2 version of Jelly Bean that's been released. The 4.1 has gone up to something like 8 or 9% of all users. 4.2 has like 8 or 9% of all users. But you can see you have a tremendous amount of people who still have 4.04. You still have a tremendous amount of people who are still running 2.3.7. So if you're targeting this as a native device and you're trying to create applications, it is really hard to do on Android. Windows is very similar, right? They have all of these different versions, and Microsoft tends to completely revamp their mobile strategy every time a new version comes out. I'm not dissing them, because every company does that to a certain extent. But Pocket PC, Mobile 2003, Mobile 5, Mobile 6, all these different versions. RT8, right, of Windows 8 that goes along with mobile devices. Completely different frameworks, completely different development environments to go after all this. Who do you target? Do you target the latest and greatest people who are most likely to buy your application? Do you target your installed base? If I'm on Android, do I target the 56% of people who are still running 2.3.7 on their devices? Or do I target the new people who just got their phones and the latest version of Android are more likely to buy applications from you? It's a tough thing to do. So when you're talking about developing native applications, there are benefits. They run a little faster. They have access to all of the hardware inside your device. And if you're developing those types of applications, then obviously you may have to go this way. But if you're not, if you're developing an Oracle-based application where you're talking about a data store that's Oracle and you're pulling information, you're doing transactional type information, having a native application probably is overkill. You probably don't need all of that functionality. Does a typical Oracle application need to get down to the actual hardware of a tablet device or a phone device? Maybe. But in most cases, you're probably doing what? You're probably doing transactional, maybe you're updating information, you're walking around your warehouse and you're looking at inventory, and you want to see a chart. Okay, this particular piece of inventory, this TV, how much did I sell in the last couple of years? You don't need access right down to the features of the particular tablet. It might be nice to add those features, but you probably don't need those types of things. If you are going to target a mobile device, then you have to develop in different languages. There's not a common language to develop all of these different pieces, right? iOS uses something called Objective-C. Android uses Java, and I call it Java-ish because it's not pure Java, right? There's the huge multi-billion-dollar lawsuit that Oracle is suing Google because Google kind of forked the Java source code, and did they, copyright all of the APIs, and Android kind of changed some of the things around. So it basically is Java, but it's not really Java. It's kind of Java-ish. Windows, you have this entire enormous framework, .NET. Is anybody part of the Microsoft developer community? They used to send these unbelievable binders full of CDs with documentation. Has everybody gotten those? Like this huge CD, and they're DVDs, and they're 4.5 gigs on each DVD. They would send you like 50 of them. Who can read all of that? Who could possibly understand all of those different pieces of information? So you do have this really incredibly robust development environment, but .NET is not easy to learn. C# is not easy to learn. Figuring out all the different pieces that go along with this. So you can create native applications for mobile, but if you're going to target these different operating systems, you have to worry about the different versions of the operating system, the different languages, the different development environments. There's a lot of hassle that goes along with this. I should just walk over here every time I want to change a slide. This thing is just... You need different skill sets when you're talking about mobile devices. It's not enough just to focus on the business logic, to focus on security, all those other things that go along with it. You need somebody who really understands mobile user interfaces. That's a whole other skill set. There's a lot of developers who are very sensitive to those types of things. A lot of developers aren't. They're really focused on the guts of the application, the business logic of the application. Different development methodologies. Other issues that go along with doing native applications, right? iOS, you have to do most of your testing through emulators. Tony was nice enough in my last presentation to point out the fact that you can tie a specific iOS device to your development environment and move your application there. But it's tough to, let's say, send your application on an iOS device to a group of different people to say, hey, do some user acceptance testing for me. I want you to work with this application on a daily basis for a week and tell me what your experience is like were with it. With iOS, that's unbelievably difficult to do. You have to pay your $100 fee, and you have to submit it to the App Store, and you have to go through the approval process, and yada, yada, yada. Android is a lot more flexible at letting you develop something and move it to your Android device so that you can work with it on a daily basis and say, does this really work? Is this helping my productivity? Is it kind of clunky? Is the performance issues as I'm walking around the warehouse, does it really work that well? Android's a lot better for doing stuff like that, but, oh, of course, now the stupid thing works. It's a lot better for doing stuff like that, but you have to worry about all of these different types of devices, all the different APIs that are out there. Windows, like I said, has this huge overhead for handheld development. There's a lot of stuff that you really have to learn. It's not something that you can hop on there pretty easily and do. In my last presentation, I walked through, I created a fully functional, forms-based, transactional application, and I did it in about 5 minutes. And it was working on everybody's laptops. Everybody can see my Linksys router here. I had everybody hook up to my Linksys router, and they were working on their mobile devices, and it was purely functional, fully functional web form. I was able to do it in like 5 minutes. There's no way you can do it in 5 minutes using the Windows tools or the Xcode tools that come with iOS. You're also limited with your platforms. iOS, you're limited to OS X. So if you're going to develop iOS applications, you have to have people who understand OS X and are running Apple-based hardware. Windows Mobile, again, limited to Windows. They want to lock you into their development environment. They want to lock you into their platform. Android is pretty cool. You can develop on just about any platform you can imagine. You can develop on OS X, Windows, or Linux. But again, these have challenges too. Application Express is trying to eliminate all of these different things for mobile development and make it so much easier for you to do. So there are some benefits of running native applications on your mobile device, but there's a lot of downsides that go along with it too. Now there's no way that timed out because I just flipped that slide like a second ago. There is something weird going on with this. The background of jQuery, Oracle Application Express 4.2, fully supports jQuery and all the things that go along with that language. Is it 100% implemented in 4.2? No. You get about 80 to 90% of all of the jQuery mobile different pieces inside of Application Express, and certainly all of the major ones. And the reason that Oracle can't give you 100% is just like all of the other standards that are on web. See, this thing has like a mind of its own. And look at that, now it's frozen. That's so weird. Again, I apologize for these quirky. And the reason Application Express can't do this is that jQuery is outside of Oracle. The standards are changing all the time. They're updating different libraries and doing all of those different things. But 90% of the cool functionality that's in jQuery mobile is going to be inside Application Express. Some of the key things, it's compatible with all major mobile platforms. iOS, Android, BlackBerry, WebOS, virtually every mobile browser that's out there supports jQuery tech tags inside the pages that it renders. And it makes it a lot easier for you to do things like rotate your screen. You rotate your screen, everything gets resized automatically. Swiping, right? How do you double click or how do you left click? on a mobile screen, right? There's no way to do it. You can left click on a mouse and there's a whole bunch of functionality built into that. There's nothing on the screen that can do that. jQuery can handle all of those different things for you. It can handle resizing pages automatically. Like I said, when you go from portrait to landscape, it can draw charts and graphs and optimize them for mobile devices. So you can do all of those things automatically. And it's all based on the latest standards. HTML5 driven configuration for laying out pages for clinical scripting. You don't have to be a jQuery guru to take advantage of all the functionality. You have these templates that, like I said, are already set up in Application Express that you can use out of the box. If you want to go into those templates, if you want to go behind the scenes into the code and modify them for your exact needs, you can do that too. But you don't have to. You can certainly use the functionality that is provided right out of the box. So the basics that go along with jQuery Mobile is that it's a doc type that comes along with HTML5. There are things called mobile style sheets, multi-page templates, dialogues, themes, all the things that you would typically use in a web-based development environment. jQuery has access to all of those things. And again, you can use the templates that are right out of the box in Application Express, or you can use them to set up the basic functionality of your page and then go in there and customize the board for exactly what you're looking for. It's easy to learn. You avoid the App Store approval madness and the debug build hell. Cross-platform, cross-device. I don't want to have to worry when I develop a mobile application. Somebody might come into the warehouse with a Nexus 10 tablet. They may come in with a Windows mobile device. They may come in with the new BlackBerry Z10. They may come in with an iPad. I want to be able to give them cool functionality in any types of those environments, and we can do that. There's a tremendous amount of support out there. There are huge libraries that are available. There are tons of people who are adding functionality to the jQuery mobile framework every single day. It is a little slower than, obviously, running an application native on your device. But we've already talked about all of the disadvantages of having to go through that. So it is a little slower. It is quirky because it is a standard that's being updated by a lot of different people. There is no governing board for jQuery mobile. It can be a little quirky at times. And obviously you have limited capabilities versus native, having a native application. But again, for an Oracle-based application, how many times do you actually need to get down to the hardware of the device? Very rare. I'm going to buy one of these. Charge it to my boss. He doesn't know what's coming about. Yeah. So Apex 4.2, again, all of this functionality is 4.2. You don't see them in 4.1, you don't see them in 4.0. And again, I'm really surprised that Oracle called the latest version 4.2. I'm surprised they didn't go right to 5.0 because there's, like I said, so much new functionality in here. Oracle Application Express does not include the entire jQuery mobile library. Again, 90% of it's in there. But you can add these active other components of jQuery just by including the relevant files. People are adding these new libraries that have this cool new functionality all the time. Somebody develops some new library that has some cool jQuery mobile functionality in it. You can just download that file. Here's a CSS file that I can include as part of a link that's inside my application. I can get right down to this level on the page if I want to. I don't have to in Apex. I don't have to get down to that level, but I could if I wanted to. It's very extensive, and you have the ability to go in and do all of these different cool things. So what is the typical way that you go through and create a mobile application inside of Application Express? You create the application. You can create or modify an existing template. You can create a new template from scratch, if that's what you'd like to do. You create your pages, then you just apply the template to the page that you create. That's all there is. For those of you who were in my previous presentation, I didn't even create the template, right? We just went in and we created an app. We said for the app we want to use the jQuery mobile template as part of the app. Completely skipped that step. I went through and I created my pages, and then we viewed it on our mobile devices, and everybody was able to see it. Unbelievably cool. Web services. We talked a little bit about the beauty of web services and the types of things that they can do inside your organization. Whenever you try to take a little piece, and again, the word service is really focused on a very specific business activity. And it sounds like an academic definition, and it kind of, developers are like, they kind of fall asleep when you start talking about that. But a specific business activity is, something like adding an inventory item, adding somebody to HR, updating a payroll thing. All of those are very specific business activities. And again, in most organizations, you don't have a homogeneous environment, right? You've got a heterogeneous environment where you've got an Oracle app over here, you've got an SAP app over here, you've got an inventory app over here. Wouldn't it be great to get all of those different pieces together and reuse the code that you've already written? Something that validates a credit check, the example that I gave earlier. Wouldn't it be great to have all of that centralized in one location instead of having all of these different places? Before 4.2, in Application Express, we could read web services. We could interface with an existing web service, and we can read from it. And the example that Oracle gives in all of its books is like a weather web service. There's a bunch of free ones that are out there. You plug in all the information in there, and there's usually two fields. There's something like zip code and the return field that says, okay, what's the temperature going to be like? So I can put in Denver zip code, and it'll come back for the day and say, today it's going to be 36 degrees in Denver, whatever it's going to be. So before versions of 4.2, you can only read from web services. And again, this was all template driven. You didn't have to worry about all that gory code. Is anybody familiar with web services and has had to code them on a regular basis? There's a lot of code that goes behind the scenes to make a web service into a web service. There's a whole bunch of standards that you have to follow. There's a lot of XML code. If anybody knows anything about XML code, the IOUG presentation that's also here in the Colorado Convention Center in February, they had someone do a keynote speech a couple of years ago, and one of the things they said was the people who love XML code more than anybody else, hard disk manufacturers. Because XML code takes up so much space, because they're so big files, you have to have enormous hard disks inside your system. Hard disk manufacturers love XML, because everybody's going to XML with standards, and they got these huge files that they have to go through, and they're chewing up disk space all the time. Everybody needs more disk space on their system. So XML files are a pain in the neck to read. They have all the information spelled out for you and everything like that. But creating web services and following all the standards and understanding SOAP and REST and all the different architecture methodologies is really a pain in the neck. Application Express hides you from most of those implementation details. With 4.2 Plus, not only can we read web services, we can create web services. This is huge. This is absolutely enormous for enterprise-wide type development inside your organization for the things that you're trying to create. One of the things that Oracle has always pushed with JDeveloper says if you want a true enterprise-wide environment where you want to reuse code, you want to implement all of these things, you have to go to JDeveloper. You can't do an Application Express. That's certainly not true anymore with 4.2. It is very easy to use a web-based interface, a web-based wizard where you go through and you just select and you have a page, or maybe you got a report on the page. You just go into Application Express and you say, hey, for this region, I want you to expose the report on this region as a web service. As soon as you do that, any other language, any other application that understands web services, and again, every modern language does, can now access that report that's on your web page. Maybe it's a form. Maybe it's a simple procedure that says, okay, for this piece of inventory, as soon as we scan it, we want to send an email off to the head of our inventory department that says, we just got a shipment and it was above $1 million for this one particular item. You can set up a web service that can do that, piece of cake. So not only can you read web services in 4.2, you can now create them also. Software system designed to support interoperable machine-machine interaction over a network. Man, what a boring academic definition that is. I think I got this right from Wikipedia. But what this really means is that when you create your web services, as long as you conform to the standards, and again, XML is kind of this language that web services use. It's language independent, I don't care what language it's written in. It's OS independent, it's location independent. As long as I can access where this particular web service is hosted, I have access to the web service. If I have something, a web service that allows me to add a piece of inventory, to replace a piece of inventory, to say for a piece of inventory this is damaged and we need to send a message back to the vendor that we received some inventory but a portion of it was damaged. If I have all of those encapsulated in web services, then when it comes time for me to create an application that goes through that, what am I doing? I'm just plug and play, right? I just create a composite application that says, okay, first do the add inventory piece, do a check to make sure the inventory is okay, send a verification of the inventory. If there's any damaged inventory, call the damaged inventory case. I can create a composite application that does all of those things for me automatically. And when it comes time for me to update that information, I don't have to search where in the world is the validate inventory piece. Is it in my SAP system? No, I think it was over here. I have one place. I have one place in my web service that I can go to and say, that's where it is. So once I've created all of those different pieces, it completely changes the philosophy of your developers inside your organization. They start thinking in terms of components and services and then linking all of those different pieces together. So they're not reinventing the wheel over and over again. Why do they exist? Well, reuse, obviously we talked about that. SOA pieces, everybody familiar with service-oriented architecture? All of the different things that go along with SOA obviously are built on web services. That's one of the key components. The S in SOA stands for services, so there's a connection there. Integration, different systems. How many companies spend so much time in silos and data warehouses because the information between different systems has to be massaged and changed, and there's no way of directly accessing that information. What happens? You set up these data silos, these data warehouses, you start pumping information into it, but the data warehouse needs a whole bunch of maintenance. You need administrators to go in there. You need people who understand the business logic so that the information is getting transformed and moved into the right fields. Some batch job breaks at 2 o'clock in the morning, so the DBA has to get in there and figure out what's going on. What happens with almost all data silos and data warehouses in most organizations? They become more work than the benefit they provide, right? If we can integrate, if we can talk to all of our different systems that are out there through a common way of interfacing with something that's on an SAP system, or an Oracle system, or Microsoft system, if we can integrate with all of those different pieces, and again, web services are all based on standards, I can eliminate a lot of those integration headaches. Not only do I have no maintenance between all the different pieces, but I can get up to the second information, as opposed to a data warehouse where I may only upgrade once a month, or update once a month, or once a week. And then everybody has to know, okay, I'm looking at this information in the data warehouse, it's really a week old, it's really a month old, I don't really have all of the information there. With web services, I can integrate all of these systems and get up to the second information. Gives me a tremendous amount of versatility, a tremendous amount of cost savings. I can deploy applications so much more quickly. Loose coupling. No one piece can bring down my entire system. Everything is loosely coupled so that I can have all this information pulled from different pieces. I may have an application, like a data warehousing application, that pulls in a whole bunch of information from different sites. If one of the sites is down, the whole application doesn't go down. They're loosely coupled. I have the ability to say, you know what, this one particular piece is offline. The application still works, but I can't get to this one piece for whatever reason. Maybe there's network maintenance, maybe there's database maintenance, what's going on. And it all uses standard protocols. And the beauty of Application Express is that I don't have to understand all of the XML and all the SOAP protocols, SOAP, Simple Object Access Protocol, the REST architecture, representational state transfer. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Application Express is going to handle all that gory stuff behind the scenes for me automatically. There's two different philosophies when it comes to web services. One is called SOAP, Standard Object Access Protocol. The other is called REST, Representational State Transfer. SOAP uses a whole bunch of different standards. They all use XML. SOAP uses XML as a message-based protocol. WSDL stands for Web Services Description Language. All of these different standards. And this is where web services scares off a lot of people, because not only do they have to understand all of these different things, but now you have to do these standards, you have to read and create XML messages, you have to understand what WSDLs go through. SOAP has more functionality. You can do more things with a SOAP-based web service than you can with a REST-based web service, but it's a heck of a lot more complex. And there's a lot more things that you have to understand. REST is a heck of a lot simpler to use. And guess what Application Express uses? REST. Application Express uses REST-based web services. They do not use SOAP-based web services. With a SOAP-based web service, you can do pretty much any transaction, any type of functionality that you can imagine. Maybe it's going against the data source, maybe it's going against an Oracle database, but maybe it isn't. Maybe it's a weather application, like I said earlier, where it's just pulling weather from some file somewhere. So SOAP has a lot more functionality. REST is much easier to use. You can see there's no standard specification. The result is readable. It comes back. Here's some more standards. XML. I forgot what JSON stands for. Object. I know the O in JSON is object, but I can't remember exactly what it is. But REST is a heck of a lot easier to use. REST is really good for transactional environments. What's Oracle? What's Application Express? Transactional environment, right? So REST is really good for that. That's what Application Express supports. REST does not enforce the message format. It is a stateless protocol. You can actually have SOAP messages that are used as a stateful protocol. Does everybody understand the difference between stateless and stateful? The way I always think about it, stateless and stateful. Stateful, I think about a phone call. If I make a phone call to somebody, I'm maintaining that connection, even if I'm not talking to them. Right? We're maintaining that connection. That connection could be broken at any time. If I'm talking to somebody on a cell phone and the battery goes dead, they drive into a tunnel, we lose the connection. The only way to reestablish that connection is I have to make the call again. The benefits to stateful is that the information is transmitted instantaneously. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Chris. The information comes back right back and forth. Stateless is like sending a text message. If I send a text message to somebody, right, I say, hey, Stephanie, how's everything going? Send. Stephanie doesn't have to have her phone on. She doesn't have to have her phone. She doesn't have to actively accept the message. It just kind of goes out there. It's not instantaneous. It takes a little while to find Stephanie's phone and deliver the text message. But stateless is very similar to that. It's much more reliable. Stateful connections are nowhere near as reliable as stateless connections are, right? With a stateless connection, it doesn't matter if Stephanie's phone's off. Doesn't matter if she chooses not to accept the call. It doesn't matter if she's in a tunnel somewhere and she doesn't have service. It doesn't matter if her battery's dead. Eventually the message is going to get to her. As opposed to a stateful connection, a phone call, I can have all of those different things happen and the communication is lost. So stateless connections are much more reliable. They're not as instantaneous, but they're much more reliable. And that's what REST is based on. I'm going to wear a hat for this thing. SOAP is really good when you have asynchronous processing and invocations, stateful operation, formal contracts between different elements inside your enterprise development tool. That's what SOAP is really good for, and that's what it was originally designed for. REST is good when you have limited bandwidth. You can cache the information. That's what happens when you send a text message, right? If I can't deliver it to Stephanie, it gets cached somewhere in the cloud, in the magic. And then eventually when Stephanie turns her phone back on, the message gets delivered. And when we're talking about stateless operations, for most intents and purposes, when we're dealing with transactional environments, we're talking about stateless operations. Another new feature of Application Express 4.2 was the release of the Web Listener. The Web Listener 2.0 gives you a three-tier environment, a true three-tier environment. Application Express Listener has been around for a long time, but they've added a bunch of new features to it. One of the things that freaks DBAs out when you tell them you're going to start developing Application Express applications is the fact that the development environment's in the database. The code I generate, the PL/SQL code from the wizard, gets generated in the database. When people run applications, the database runs the PL/SQL code, serves up the pages. DBAs go, oh my God, I tuned my database within an inch of its life. Now you're telling me there's going to be all this more activity in my database with developers doing all of these weirdo things and generating code, and they're going to be accessing stuff through the database? DBAs freak out when you tell them this is what's going to happen. Oracle's done a great job at optimizing all the information inside the database. So it's very rare that an application significantly hurts your database. But for those people who are really freaked out about it, you can break this into a three-tier architecture. And the three-tier architecture is obviously the database, the end client, and we've got the web listener now in the middle. The web listener is the thing that's going to serve up all the pages and return the database back into what it was originally designed for, right? Just the data store. It holds all the data. It's actually the web listener that's going to serve up the pages. If you want to use some of the cool things like web services, you have to use the web listener. You cannot run Application Express in the, I don't want to call it the traditional environment, the old-fashioned environment where you're serving everything up right from the database. It's actually the XMLDB libraries that serve up the web pages. You cannot run in that environment and create REST-based web services. There's no place to store them. Where do you store the REST-based web service when you're running around on the database? You can't store it in the database. It's got to be as part of the web server. So you have this web listener that allows you to do that. There's a lot of other features that go along with the web listener, like security features, performance features. It gives you a lot more flexibility if you have a large-scale Oracle Application Express type application that you want to roll out to your environment. So now you have these things called resource templates that makes it a lot easier for you to set up a whole bunch of different rules that go along. I'll get to your question in a second. You have a whole bunch of resource templates that are available to you. You now have Oracle Authorization 2 support for RESTful services. Oracle Application Express, I'm sorry, I said Oracle Open Authorization 2.0, which is kind of a standard way of putting security around your RESTful web services there. You also have things inside of your application Express environment that allows you to set up security that goes along with your RESTful services, that allows you to add those to composite applications. Sir, you had a question. I don't want to skip over you. The question is the endpoint, the URI endpoint that actually goes to it. It does not necessarily have to be on the database server. You can have a true three-tier environment where it's another service, and when you create the WAR file that goes along with Application Express at this level, you actually specify, here's where the database is. It's on some other server. Here's the IP address. Here's the login information. Once you create that WAR file, you can either run the WAR file by itself, or you can deploy it to Glassfish. You can deploy it to Oracle Web Application Server. You can WebLogic. You can deploy it to any of those environments and have it there. Does that make sense? Everybody's really quiet. Am I overloading everybody with too much information? I'm excited about this stuff, so I want to give it all to you so you can see how cool it is. But at the same time, I'm going to bore everybody into submissions. See, man. Nishan. I was hoping we wouldn't get into that too much, but yes, there is some licensing issues that go along with the Apex listener. I don't know the gory details. If you give me your email address afterwards, I can send you some information. Tony may be able to help out with that too. I'm not exactly sure how Oracle is doing that right now with the licensing issue, but I think the XE database has a limit of like either 12 or 15 gigs. So for those type of environments where you don't have a lot of information, you can have a totally free environment. You can run XE, you could run Application Express, and it's really cool for a lot of organizations. They don't need, an application that has more than 15, 16 gigs of data. But when it comes to, like the question you asked, and you get to some more complex environments, come up afterwards and give me your email address, and I'll find the information. So, RESTful web services as part of the web listener. Again, you have to run the web listener if you're going to do all of those things. And there's a lot of cool functionality that's built in there. I won't get into a lot of the gory details right now, but there's a lot of really cool features that are built in there. And again, the thing that I say to people over and over and over and over again, and they start rolling their eyes at me after a while, it's free. You don't pay a dime for it. You have to pay for the Oracle database, obviously. But again, if you have 10G, if you have 11G, if you have 9.9, it's free. You don't pay a dime for the development environment, the runtime environment. It's there. It's just sitting there waiting for you to use. The implications of all these technologies is obviously, we hinted on this a little bit before, is the organizational methodology. Once you can get your developers to start thinking in more global terms, instead of just focusing on their myopic focus on this particular application, once they can start thinking in terms of business services and saying, you know what? I may be able to turn this into like a web service that I can use in other applications. It completely transforms your development environment, especially for large organizations. You're not reinventing the wheel over and over. When it comes time for the business person to come down and say, you know what, we need to change the threshold on this particular business rule. In the past, you had to do the analysis. You had to go and say, okay, where is the code? Oh, it's in 5 different places. You have to set up a testing methodology that says, okay, we're going to change this around. Now we need to do functional testing, we need to do regression testing, we need to do system testing, we need to do user acceptance testing. You have to go through all of these different pieces. With this type of functionality in a web service, again, you've locked it down to this one specific piece. You have one piece where you do credit checks in your organization, not all over the place. You can test it within an end of its life. When it comes time to make a change, you can make that one change, deploy a new version of the web service out there. All of the other applications that access that web service automatically get that new functionality. You don't have to go through regression testing and performance testing and user acceptance testing. All of that stuff happens instantaneously. Composite applications are the building of applications using other components. So I can build full-blown applications just using web services. Again, an inventory piece, okay, I have this inventory, add inventory web service. I'll have my application use that first. Then once I'm finished there, I'll go to validate inventory. Then once I go there, I'll go into notify inventory and vendors and all that sort of stuff. I can just piece together all of these different puzzle pieces, put them together in a composite application and be ready to go. SOA for larger scale environments has a tremendous amount of functionality in terms of business monitoring, transforming information, being able to set up business rules at the messaging level. I now have capabilities to do all that. If I have a SOA environment inside my organization, I can create these web services inside of Application Express and integrate them into my SOA environment. Maybe it's not an Oracle SOA environment, maybe it's an IBM SOA environment. Microsoft really doesn't have a SOA environment, but there's other companies that provide SOA-based services. Because everything in web services is based on standards, I should, in theory, be able to integrate with any of these different environments inside my organization relatively easily. I can integrate with things outside my organization, maybe my vendors, right? A lot of companies interface directly with FedEx. FedEx has a whole bunch of web services that are out there that I can integrate with automatically. I have all of these shipments to do. I don't want to have to manually say to FedEx, hey, I got 500 boxes, you need to send a truck this size to pick up all my shipments going. I can set up a web service that notifies FedEx automatically. So that every day when I have my inventory and I list, okay, all of these boxes are ready to ship, I can save the measurements of all of those boxes, send it off to FedEx. FedEx can then make the decision, hey, we need an 18-wheeler because Chris's company is sending out a whole bunch of inventory today. Well, today's a real slow day. We can just send out a little truck so that we can pick up all the shipments. We can do all of those cool things like that. We can do all those cool things. I can't get my clicker to work, but we can do all these other cool things. The battery says full. I don't understand this. SOA-based environments. Where's the code? Where's the code live in a typical complex SOA environment? Is it inside a JSP? Is it in an EJB? Everybody know what an EJB is? Entity Java B? Hideous to code. Horrible to code and test. EJB's got a lot better with the 3.0 specification. They're incredibly difficult to test. Oh, this is garbage. Is it part of my middleware? Is it part of a Java library? Is it part of a reporting tool? Is it inside a web service? BPOs, everybody know what BPO is? Business Process Execution Language. I have all these web services, how do I tie them all together? That's what I use. Is it part of my Oracle Service Bus, a bus that maintains all of my web services that I can do versioning and transformation of logic? Is it inside of a PL SQL package? Is it inside a DB trigger or a constraint? So when you're talking about a SOA environment, there's a tremendous amount of flexibility. But there's a tremendous amount of overhead that goes along with development too. Where does all this code live? Even if I have this documented within an edge of its life, and we all know companies document all of it. We've all worked in companies where you have this incredible documentation library of where everything is. Even if you have something like that, you need the skill set inside your organization to fix it. If it's inside a reporting tool and I want to make a change there, what reporting tool am I using? Who knows the reporting tool? Who can go in there and make the change that I need to? BPAL is based on XML. What am I using to generate my XML code? Am I hand coding XML? Oh my Lord, that's hideous. Maybe I'm using JDevelop. Maybe I'm using Java Eclipse. The Oracle Service Bus, maybe the code lives there. So there's a lot of headaches that go along with this. Again, I'm not trying to disparage Java, SOA, JDeveloper in any way, shape, or form. Incredible tools. But for a lot of companies, it's over. Who has the skills to do that? Do I train my people inside my organization, or do I bring in consultants? How do I handle licensing? I want to add the Oracle Service Bus to my SOA environment. Now I have to go through the whole licensing rigmarole. I have to pull Oracle. I say I want to license this. They send me the CDs. I get it installed. I do all these things. Apex, none of this stuff. Zero. You don't have to worry about any of it. Apex builds web services based on Oracle object. That's the key. I cannot base a web service in Apex off of anything. JDeveloper, I can do it off of anything. I can write it off a flat file. I can write it off of business logic that I put inside my Java code. I can do anything. Apex builds web services based on Oracle objects, tables, views, procedures, and functions, that type of thing. It's all REST-based in Apex. JDeveloper gives me a tremendous amount of flexibility where I can use REST-based or SOAP-based. JDeveloper, I have to write the code. Anybody write Java code on a regular basis? It's a new feature. I think it came out in Java 6 called annotations. Makes it a lot easier to write web services in Java code using annotations, but it's still a pain in the neck. Apex, it's all wizard-based. I don't have to know anything about XML. I don't have to know anything about SOAP, REST, all the standards over there. I go to a page, I have something on a page, I pick a region on the page, I say, hey, this region, whatever it is, form, report, chart, graph, calendar, expose it as a web service. Apex goes, okay, boom, here's your URL. Here's it exposed as a web service. Complexity, really complex to do things in a SOA JDevelopment environment. Oracle has this thing called AIA. Anybody ever hear that? Application Integration Architecture. It's designed specifically for the e-business suite. It's a way of providing web services to the e-business suite. There are people who get six-figure salaries just for being AIA experts. Nothing more. They don't know anything about EBS, they don't know anything about Java, they don't know anything about JDeveloper. They can make 6 figures a year just being an AIA expert. And again, I'm not criticizing this. I'm just saying the complexity that goes along with this can really be incredible for a lot of organizations. It's overkill. If you got a small type of transactional application you want to develop, Apex, I'm going to grind my teeth tonight thinking about this, is not just a hobbyist tool. It is a true enterprise-wide tool, especially under 4.2. You need to know Java, XML, XSL, right? XML style sheets. You have to understand web services, REST-based, SOAP-based web services, Java server faces, BPOP. This thing is Oracle-specific, ADF, right? There's a whole framework that goes on with JDevelopment that allows you to do applications a heck of a lot more easily than you would under normal circumstances. But you still got to know ADF. Web Center, if you're going to do portals, AIA, we mentioned before, OBIEE, all of the different technologies that go along with Oracle. Running out of time here, so. Those are the biggies. Those are the biggies that are in 4.2. Mobile development, web services, tremendous amount of functionality. Some of the new things that we also have, HTML5 charts. Oracle is starting to move away from Flash-based charts. As of right now, you have more options to do cool things with Flash-based charts than with HTML5 charts. But that scale is going to tip pretty soon. Oracle is de-emphasizing Flash charts more and more. They're adding more and more functionality to HTML5 charts. But as of right now, if you really want an application that does all of these really cool things like pie charts that fly in and users can readjust things and they have a slider at the bottom and then readjust everything, you have to go with Flash. But that's definitely changing. There are HTML5 item types that Application Express automatically supports, sliders, date pickers, yes and no switches, placeholder attributes, and HTML5 type email, where you have email functionality. Somebody came up in my last presentation and asked me about this. There's a tremendous amount of email functionality built right into HTML5 that Application Express gets automatically. So if you have something like a feedback button on your page, this is really good for beta applications that are out there. You can have a page that has a feedback button where the users you're working with on a regular basis, they go, this is just clunky, it doesn't really work well. They can hit the feedback button, it opens up an HTML5 mail window, and they can type in, this page doesn't really work too well. I really would like this to be a drop-down. I'd like this to be a radio button. You're making me enter the calendar all the time. I want a calendar widget. They can enter all that information, boom, shoot you an email, and as a developer, you get that right away. An enhancement request, a bug request that comes from you automatically. Email attributes like when we add a new employee, we can automatically shoot off an email to our network people saying, hey, we just added this new employee, they need network access to all of the things. Have it done automatically. You want to eliminate as much human interaction with all these different pieces as you possibly can. An HTML required attribute. How does Oracle require fields? Not null, right? You say a field is not null, Application Express already picks that up. But if you don't want to use the wizards, if you want to use something like Dreamweaver to create your own pages because you have really specific design requirements, you can use these HTML5 attributes to mimic that functionality inside your Oracle database. Mobile calendars. I wish I had more time to talk about packaged application. This is a huge benefit. It's a way of packaging your application along with all the database code that goes behind it so that you can have, and Oracle talked about this last year, I haven't seen its implementation yet, but they talked about having an iTunes type store for Application Express. So that you can develop an application, create it as a packaged application, move it up to the Oracle store, and then, maybe I develop like a little HR application or an application that does like QuickBooks. And I have all of that functionality. I can package that application up, send it to the Oracle store, and say, this application is $20. And I can have actually people buy my application, download their package application, makes all the changes to their database so that it updates all the tables and everything like that. And I can sell a packaged application. Or I can extend the functionality of Application Express by providing free packaged applications to do all of these different cool things. I might develop a presentation on that because that is really an exciting feature of packaged applications. And there's also something called dynamic actions. Inside of Application Express, it's very JavaScript-like. So we can have dynamic actions that happen immediately on a page where I want to validate, let's say, a piece of information, but I don't want to make a round trip to the database. I don't want to send information, okay, this person's salary is $100,000, but I have a rule in the database that says nobody can have a salary above $90,000. If I leave it as a trigger inside the database or a rule inside the database, I have to make that round trip when it comes time for me to send the information. If I want to do validations or dynamic things on the screen, I can set these dynamic actions that happen instantaneously as soon as I leave a particular field, as soon as the field gets ghosted out, where it's not available to me anymore. As soon as I tab out of the field, I can do those things. And there's a whole bunch of new dynamic action enhancements that go along with the latest version of Application Express. Does anyone have any questions? I'm hanging out here. I got another presentation in an hour or so I'm not going anywhere. For everybody who's in my previous presentation, I'm sorry that some of this information was duplicated, but hopefully it was useful to you. More than anything else, don't let anyone tell you that this is just a hobbyist environment. Don't let anyone from Oracle or anywhere else tell you that Apex is not ready for the enterprise. Tell them Chris told you that you are full of bunk. It is a dynamic, incredible environment. It's free. It's sitting there waiting for you to use. It's incredibly powerful. I am really excited about this, and thanks so much everybody for attending. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Joseph. Hi, Ann. How are you? Thanks. Anytime the
short answer to that is see if you can get down to New Orleans and be in June. Yeah. That would be a case go. And then you can talk to and then different people in here. Yeah. For a price of a beer, you get lots of information. True. It's good. Okay, cheers.
Oh, is it okay?
I think it's my next.
We just had somebody who needed a C# food and I'm sorry, who's next? I don't remember. It's like at the deli counter. It's like. I-7, yeah, there's a couple of really weird things that go on with that. We have been recommending people to hire if we're using those things because we have seen they fixed a lot of the security builds in 96, but 97 still has the flash drive and HDMI flash drive. Doesn't handle HDMI flash drive at all.
Yeah,
but, it's tough if you can get your users up to sorry.
No, that's right. I was just curious.
Yeah.
There's something we missed.
No.
Thank you.
Patrick?
Say you're out of town. Finally go to the basic awareness. How do you handle that? You store and you still want the input going in. How do you store it locally and how do you reset that locally?
I've had a couple people ask me
Yeah, where people
as of right now, yeah, I mean, you could use that. Depending on the device, here's where a couple of people came up and said, well, maybe you do need access to the actual core hardware because iOS engine doesn't support that or something like that. So there are ways of sending people offline storing information and those things. Unfortunately, I haven't found one way to solution. But that's an excellent question. That's something I would definitely look into.
basement.
Middle of a transaction, goes to the activity, covers its hands.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. Excellent, thank you. Great question. Yes, sir. I'll leave my business cards here if anybody wants a business card.
On web services, I just need some clarification because I know the island is a mix for just on the because I was using it now with the features I have reached out on the web to like find it's which is good. You know, because now it's like, oh, okay, we can use this, and we have it in our, we have kind of like business, I can see the business, the one developer was asking me about this, and asking me was because there's so much stuff that we have to relate and then so if we were to update that information using web services, do you include the app? Server then have web services access that, or can you access the tables directly without having to do that?
That's a good question. APX was designed to work with an older device, so it doesn't work with these other devices natively. Unlike jDeveloper, which can use just about any data source in the world that you can imagine, you probably have to write some server-side code. Well, not necessarily jDeveloper. Natively includes also service whether it's lives on the Apache server or Sorry to be elaborate.
Well, that's okay. That's okay, because I want to be able to give that information because they can do that stuff.
And you can always have a temporary. You can always have a temporary table. I mean, this adds one more layer.
That was my original idea.
Replicated.
It was an Oracle table, so maybe we could have like staging tables in the Oracle and pass the information. But then it gets a little more complicated. You're doing updates and links and ads and that sort of thing. And that's a tiny little.
Replication.
Bad.
I can use it as queuing.
So, okay. Good information. Thank you so much.
Make sure
Very large writer forms application.
Oh boy,
And we
okay.
are looking for a replacement. We're talking to Gartner, they suggested Apex is one of the options. Customers who are seriously using Apex.
Yes. It's actually the easiest path to go if you're going from forms to a more modern architecture. There's a company here in Denver, and I'm under an NDA, so I can't divulge any information. They have a parking system information for universities all over the country, and they wanted to upgrade their interface. And we looked at we did the analysis and all the other forms and everything like that, and they were set on ADF. And I said, ADF is overkill for what you guys are trying to do. You don't have these complex forms. You want everything on the web. You want policemen to walk around and give parking tickets, and they want a mobile device. I said, Apex is definitely the way to go. We worked with them for 8 months. The project they had originally scoped for a year. In 8 months, we had over 200 forms converted into application experts.
We have forms of all kinds of complexities.
Yeah.
Like probably simple base table upgrade forms, forms that have 40 data blocks.
Yeah.
You
Apex
can
is-
imagine a form with 40 data blocks gets very heavy.
Oh, yeah.
Very fast.
Absolutely.
Where
Apex.
does Apex application typically run? Does it have to run on database or can I really talk about doing a war for web services? Can I make a war and deploy it to my web logic and not do the runtime?
No, the war is the actual listener war that lives on the mid-tier. Everything in Apex lives in the database. It's just PLC code. That's all it is. When I answer all of the questions in the wizard and I say generate form, it's just generating PLC code and it stores the PLC code in the database. Now the actual pages can get served up from the web listener, but the application itself, it's not like a war file that you can deploy to Glassfish or something. Does that make sense? I didn't see your name. Abhijit? Abhijit. Oh, you're right here in Greenwood Village. Great West. I've worked over there. The 3 buildings right off Orchard. Yeah, I've worked over there. My wife used to work for Great West. She was an insurance processor. I know. Yeah, if you ever want to ask questions, I'm here for you.
Yeah, so I mean Apex is one of the options. Obviously something of this size will rewrite not just to get out of that technology, we might have a business case. So I mean, it's probably going to be high volume, complex things will go to something of DeepL.
Right.
I mean, we still have a pretty big volume of Java, but pretty good exposure to GPU. So some of our processes will probably go in that direction. Some of them.
Insurance, you have so many rules that you have to follow. You know,
That's one of the
BPL
problems.
is great for doing stuff.
Hey,
So some of the other
I got to talk again.
extreme, we have a bunch of forms which are simple. Something where we don't have to spend a lot of time converting them. There is no conversion, right? You still have to rewrite them.
Unfortunately, no. People have said that to Oracle over and over again. Is there some tool? And they haven't created it. But I'm local. I live like right in Highlands Range. So if you ever have a question, if you're going to follow up or anything, just let me know.
Sure, sounds good.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
Nice to meet you.
Paul, how
Nice
are you?
presentation.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it.
Hey, we're looking at a mobile strategy. Would you be interested at some point in doing a
Absolutely. You know, that's one of the things our company does. You know, we do a lot of lunchtime things where we go into organizations. We can provide the lunches and sit down and talk about what's going on outside the organization. We can do them all day. Seminar. If you have people who are interested in that level, we can definitely see it.
So you think 4.2 is stable enough that,
I haven't had any significant issues with 4.2 whatsoever. I know people who are running production applications, 800 users simultaneously.
and the mobile stuff is robust as far as, because it's, you know, first release a lot of times, it's not.
Absolutely, and because it's really JMobile, that's JMobile Query, jQuery Mobile, that's driving it, it's less Oracle Application Express, and it's much more that. All those libraries have been out there for years, so it's pretty solid.
Okay, it's good.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Look forward to talking to you.
Thanks.
I got a question. Are you late?
No, I just don't want to take Michael's spot up. I gotta pack up all this stuff.
Do you want me to come back then? Yeah.